And of course, the normal way of things isn't normal yet. So we're not necessarily doing.
Meghan's royal exit was never as simple as the world believed. Sophie has now revealed a shocking bombshell that changes everything people thought they knew about what really happened inside the palace walls. Was it just a quiet departure, or was there a deeper plan hidden behind the scenes all along that no one noticed coming? Stay with us. The woman who tried to take a place. To fully grasp the upcoming surprises, a clear understanding of the present was necessary. When Sophie took her seat for the significant broadcast on May 1st, she had long been entwined with one of the world's most scrutinized families. Her path wasn't paved with authority or luxury from the start. It commenced with her nuptials in 1999, when she entered a long-standing familial structure. Living in that realm was constantly challenging. She encountered critical media, blunders that stung, and personal battles hidden from the public eye. At times, events could have shattered her resolve. Rather than crumbling, she found resilience within herself. She gained knowledge, adapted to circumstances, and maintained her composure. Gradually, she blossomed into a figure of trust, admiration, and unwavering faithfulness. Her discreet fortitude secured her a position of assurance among her loved ones. The strength of her voice was amplified by her origins. She wasn't born into that lifestyle. She approached it from an external standpoint, similar to many who came before her. She had first-hand experience of transitioning from one existence to another, which called for patience, humility, and the willingness to make sacrifices. Instead of challenging the system, she let it mold her. Consistently and over time, she embraced its demands and carefully developed into her position. Her words held significant importance whenever she chose to speak. They weren't just abstract notions or detached viewpoints. Her insights were grounded in genuine experience. Whenever she was given the freedom to express herself candidly, it signified that a considerable matter had been simmering beneath the surface for a while. The unease had been subtly escalating since the end of 2017. When she eventually voiced her opinions, it wasn't out of frustration. It started with an intuitive notion that things weren't quite right. Right away, she sensed a change. It wasn't a question of someone attempting to integrate. Instead, it seemed like an effort to dominate. She observed someone who wasn't concentrating on their assigned task, but rather had their sights set on a grander ambition. The issue wasn't about fitting in. It was about establishing oneself strategically. This subtle distinction altered the situation entirely. Rather than gradually understanding the family's dynamics, there was an evident eagerness to advance rapidly, to be at the forefront, and to wield more influence than anticipated. This didn't seem like just a mix-up or confusion. It appeared intentional. It seemed purposeful. It was akin to being inserted into a narrative and attempting to alter it from within. In that society, individuals don't get to pick their roles. They're assigned, molded by the past and obligations. Everyone occupies a position, and that position carries certain duties. However, Sophie's account was dissimilar. She felt that the assigned role was insufficient. There was a longing for more, a desire for something more intimately tied to the essence of power. Beneath the cheerful facades and sunny appearances, the reality was more complicated than it looked. A lot of individuals were under the impression that they were observing a cohesive team advancing in unison. However, internally, the hierarchy was well-defined and robust. It had its foundation in age-old customs that had steered the family for hundreds of years. There was a system, and that system held significant importance. However, it seemed there was an individual who rejected that system, a person convinced it could be swiftly altered, someone who imagined the regulations could be flexible. Her mindset was distinct from the norm, illustrated by that particular belief. The past demonstrated that altering the system wasn't an easy feat. It had endured numerous conflicts, withstand significant losses, and outlasted centuries. Its resilience was due to the high regard and adherence people had for it. Attempting to overhaul it rapidly was more than audacious. It was a grave error. Sophie understood this well. She talked about an atmosphere that seemed more like a competition for notice, rather than a calm existence of responsibility. In one realm, achieving success involves drawing attention, excelling, and outpacing others to become more prominent. However, in this setting, what it means to succeed is not the same. In this context, achieving success involves staying silent. It requires patience and stepping aside to maintain the strength of the overall vision. It's focused on serving others, rather than prioritizing oneself. It emphasizes integrating into a greater cause instead of seeking personal elevation. Several individuals in the past grasped this reality. They entered, gradually acquired knowledge, and created fulfilling lives within the confines. They acknowledged that the position involved sacrificing certain elements. In exchange, they discovered significance and gained esteem. However, there are individuals who are not prepared to make such a trade. Sophie talked about an unwillingness to change. It was about resisting transformation. Rather than adjusting to that lifestyle, there was an effort to alter it. But that wasn't all she said. Stick around. The quiet pattern around William no one wanted to see. As the narrative advanced, things became increasingly gripping and impossible to overlook. Initial worries gradually deepened into something much more profound. It shifted from mere ambition to a question of purpose. It dealt with concentration. In Sophie's view, this concentration wasn't aimless. It had a defined core. William was the individual at the core. To get a proper grasp of this, one must proceed with caution and precision. Sophie never mentioned anything about romantic feelings. She didn't imply there was some hidden affair. Instead, she spoke of something less obvious, yet more concerning. It was a consistent behavior, a strategy that appeared aimed at fostering intimacy intentionally rather than spontaneously. The change wasn't sudden or noticeable. It happened gradually and consistently. It emerged from a series of minor incidents that appeared insignificant individually. However, when viewed collectively, they painted a different picture. It was the narrative of someone attempting to inch her way into a place not meant for her, one step at a time. At the onset, this conduct began to manifest. Long before it was formalized, subtle hints suggested that something was amiss. At the Christmas event in 2017, insiders started to observe peculiar patterns. These weren't overt incidents. Rather, they were subtle behavioral changes, noticeable to those familiar with the norms of that environment. Within a household, certain behaviors are prevalent in interpersonal interactions. While some guidelines are explicitly laid out, many more are implicitly recognized. These conventions influence greetings, body language, and expressions of respect. Such behaviors maintain harmony and ensure individuals' boundaries are respected. However, Sophie talked about a tendency to overlook those invisible boundaries. In 2018, shortly after the wedding, an unusual incident took place during a party in the garden. Rather than offering a straightforward and polite greeting, their encounter was more extended and intimate. It lingered slightly beyond what was customary. Observers who paid attention noticed it wasn't merely about a new relative adjusting to her role. Instead, it appeared as though boundaries were being explored. That moment wasn't isolated. That later year, at a gathering addressing mental well-being, another subtle gesture captured attention. Before the cameras, a gentle touch signified both support and intimacy. It was unforeseen, it was uncalled for, and it was retracted almost immediately. The reaction was muted, yet unmistakable. A boundary had been overstepped. Another instance occurred during a polo match in 2019. While not in the spotlight, there were constant attempts to inch closer, converse more openly, and foster a connection that did not align with the truth. It wasn't boisterous or sensational, yet it happened enough times to become noticeable. The significance of these instances wasn't just the events themselves, it was the implications they hinted at. Every moment had its own theme. Each instance crafted its own vision. When combined, they illustrated an intimacy that wasn't genuinely there. Sophie was convinced this wasn't accidental. She didn't interpret it as a cultural misunderstanding or variation. She thought it was deliberately orchestrated. There was a calculated attempt to mold appearances, regardless of their authenticity. From her perspective, this conduct was not aimed at strengthening family ties. Instead, it was a means to garner attention. It was about positioning oneself close to the heart of authority, regardless of whether that spot was rightfully earned. Occasionally, she sensed that the aim was not so much about creating a shared future with her husband, but rather about attracting attention from another person. This stirred a sense of discomfort within her, hinting that something more profound might be happening beneath the surface. In a structure based on well-defined responsibilities, actions like this led to unease. Everyone occupies a specific position, and that position is important. It maintains harmony. It safeguards connections. When an individual starts to step beyond those boundaries, it makes people uneasy. The circumstances grew increasingly critical during a significant occurrence in early 2019. At first glance, everything appeared ideal. A group of 4 individuals gathered, discussing key topics, reflecting solidarity and power. The global audience perceived a sense of agreement. However, what was happening behind the curtain was not as peaceful. Arrangements had been made in advance, seats were assigned, and everyone understood their role and how the event was supposed to progress. However, these arrangements were disregarded. There was a desire to alter the seating, to move nearer to another spot, and to disrupt the meticulously planned equilibrium. Throughout the gathering, there were instances that disrupted the rhythm. People spoke over one another. Focus drifted away. The intended exchange turned out to be imbalanced. By the time it concluded, instead of a sense of togetherness, what lingered was tension. For those participating, it wasn't just a minor quarrel. It seemed like a direct threat to the very foundation. It was a denial of the existing order. Many doubted her views unless the palace spoke about it. What did they reveal? Let's dive in. The palace record that told the full story. In this extended and emotive narrative, a concealed element was delicately revealed for the first time. A high-ranking family member acknowledged that a discreet internal investigation had commenced on March 2021. Public discourse was prevalent during that period. There were narratives concerning staff grievances and allegations of mistreatment. The palace conceded that an inquiry was underway. However, shortly thereafter, the focus changed, and the finer details were drowned out amidst the commotion. Sophie provided insights that painted a contrasting scenario. She clarified that the internal document went beyond basic grievances. It was far more comprehensive. The file was meticulously compiled over time, containing annotations, observations, and recurring behavioral tendencies. It tracked activities that deviated from the family's anticipated conduct. This document highlighted instances where protocols were neglected. At various points, informal messages were dispatched late at night, even to those in higher positions. Rather than adhering to the official channels everyone else adhered to, attempts were made to engage individuals directly and sway outcomes through personal interactions. While these actions might have appeared insignificant individually, collectively they raised alarms. The narrative highlights instances where boundaries were frequently crossed. In that environment, maintaining space and distance plays a crucial role in showing regard for others. However, the document outlined occurrences where these unspoken norms were disregarded. Individuals experienced interactions that were overly intrusive and uncomfortably familiar. Such behaviors were not isolated incidents. Instead, they were consistent enough to be documented repeatedly. The situation intensified due to the mishandling of personal discussions. Sophie mentioned that there were worries about family talks being shared publicly, influencing a particular narrative. This narrative depicted an amiable newcomer, grappling with an unwelcoming and detached environment. It provided a vivid portrayal that garnered empathy and interest. From within the family, that perception didn't quite align with their actual experiences. It seemed more about trying to distinguish themselves rather than just seeking a place to fit in. Rather than conforming, there appeared to be a drive to rewrite the narrative and seize control over it. Sophie thought this revealed a more profound ambition. It wasn't merely about fitting into the family dynamics. The real aim was to be in the spotlight. However, when she failed to achieve this, things started to change. The concluding section of her explanation shed light on a key aspect of the subsequent departure. She perceived it not merely as being forced out. It was a choice made following the failure of certain plans. The organization stayed intact, positions stayed the same, and the system remained inflexible. Without the possibility of altering it, the sole option remaining was to walk away. The press conference that followed was perceived by many as a heartfelt and honest exchange. However, Sophie had a different perspective. To her, it marked a significant departure from the unspoken guidelines that the family always adhered to. It wasn't merely about expressing emotions. It was about showcasing a fresh identity to the public. Prior to everything that happened, Sophie made efforts to assist. She was aware of the challenges involved in stepping into that world as an outsider. Recognizing the potential struggles, she extended her hand multiple times, providing encouragement and direction. Her aim was to simplify the journey and impart the knowledge she gained from her own experiences. Yet, her assistance was declined. Her rejection sent a clear message. It conveyed that what was needed wasn't advice. What was desired was self-reliance. Authority was. Above all, There was a demand for unwavering devotion from a single individual. Sophie thought that this longing influenced all subsequent events. It drove a wedge between relatives. It constructed barriers instead of creating connections. The quiet distance that grew around Harry. A lot of individuals have questioned how someone who used to have an intimate connection with his brother could become so distant. This change didn't occur over a single night. It was not the result of a single disagreement or specific instance. This gap developed gradually, piece by piece, until it became a significant and challenging separation. Sophie provides an insightful yet understated perspective on the evolution of these events. She avoids rushing to judgment or placing blame in her narrative. Rather, she depicts a subtle transformation that occurred over time. This gradual change happened between 2019 and the start of 2020. During this period, a notable transition began to emerge in Harry's life. The bond he formerly had with his sibling began to diminish. Their once effortless conversations and shared experiences grew scarce. Channels of communication that were previously accessible started shutting down. Messages were either postponed or failed to result in gatherings. Arrangements that could have reunited the brothers were gradually abandoned. Initially, it might have seemed insignificant. Life tends to get hectic, and individuals occasionally require some breathing room. However, as time progressed, a pattern emerged. Every minor postponement and every skipped appointment contributed to a growing sense of separation. What was once spontaneous and effortless transformed into something cautious and restricted. Sophie referred to this shift as subtle and gradual. It lacked noise or theatrics. There wasn't any overt confrontation. Rather, it resembled a silent barrier being constructed, slowly increasing in height. As that barrier rose, Harry noticed himself isolated on one side, separated from his family on the opposite side. The situation was particularly sensitive due to Harry's history. Memories of his childhood, especially losing his mother, left a significant mark on him. Additionally, being the younger sibling in a hierarchy that values rank intensely added to his burden. These factors were significant influences. They affected his worldview and his sense of self. Sophie addressed these aspects of his life thoughtfully. She recognized the genuine importance of these emotions. However, she felt that rather than aiding his recovery, these emotions were unintentionally intensified in a distressing manner. They were repeatedly revisited, eventually influencing his perception of his family. As days passed, those who once brought him solace started to drift away. The surroundings that once felt like a haven started becoming strange to him. What used to be encouragement now appeared as discord. Rather than experiencing security, uncertainty took its place. This might be considered the most heart-wrenching aspect of the narrative. It wasn't the events that everyone saw or read about, but rather the silent transformation within an individual. This metamorphosis shifted affection to separation. A telling instance of this change occurred during his child's baptism in mid-2019. What could have been an open and joyous occasion turned into a more regulated and secluded affair. Choices were taken to restrict who could witness and partake in that experience. Long-standing customs were abandoned. Some viewed this as a desire for seclusion. However, others perceived it as an indication that the traditional methods were being rejected, an indication that a novel route was being embraced, distinct from previous practices. As the days went by, the same trend persisted. Choices regarding safety, roles, and duties heightened anxiety. When some demands weren't fulfilled, they felt more like personal rebuffs rather than mere regulations. Every denial contributed to an increasing sense of inequity. This emotion started to create a different narrative. In this tale, every conflict grew into something more significant. Every limit seemed like an obstacle, and the structure itself was perceived as the root of the issue. Sophie was convinced that this transformation wasn't random. It was the result of numerous minor instances, each building upon the previous. Gradually, these instances culminated in a fresh perspective on life. As all of this unfolded, Harry's role in his family grew more uncertain. His connection with his brother transformed into something more remote. The common experiences, joyful moments, and mutual understanding they previously enjoyed became increasingly elusive. The tension persisted even when the conversation shifted to titles and responsibilities. Inquiries were raised, decisions were put off, and maintaining trust became increasingly challenging. These weren't merely legal issues or formal matters to be settled. They were indicators of a more profound transformation that had already occurred. Sophie shared her thoughts on Harry's desire for safety and encouragement. She clarified that, in that environment, these aspects are tied to a sense of obligation. They belong to a bigger picture that is closely linked to duty. Seeking one without considering the other makes it challenging to maintain equilibrium. In the final stages, it became evident that going back to past practices was no longer straightforward. The way forward that once appeared accessible had been altered. This transformation wasn't driven by resentment. Instead, it was molded over time by various decisions. Ultimately, this narrative focuses on more than just duties or guidelines. It's about an individual gradually distancing himself from those who had always been part of his life. It explores how minor adjustments, when continuously made, can evolve into something significant. Above all, it's about how creating distance is often the most difficult challenge to overcome once it exists. But in that speech, there was another that Sophie spoke of. Who's that? Let's find out. The woman who never needed to compete. To fully grasp Meghan's decline, one must consider the woman who remained unscathed. According to Sophie, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, emerges as a serene and stable force at the core of it all. Catherine's narrative is neither boisterous nor intense. Instead, it is marked by being understated, straightforward, and unwavering. If Meghan symbolized action and transformation, Catherine embodied calm and equilibrium. However, their relationship was never contentious. Catherine never viewed it as a competition. She didn't attempt to rival Meghan. She didn't seek to emulate her vitality or crave the spotlight. Instead, she focused on her responsibilities and fulfilled them diligently. Right from the start, Catherine opted for an unusual route. She avoided hasty changes and refused to force adjustments. Rather than trying to transform the environment immediately, she took her time to understand it. With consistent patience, she put in effort each day. While many were preoccupied with gaining public visibility and engaging in media endeavors, Catherine concentrated on meaningful tasks that typically occurred out of the spotlight. She engaged with kids in educational settings, often sitting on the floor to listen and understand. Her focus was on nurturing early childhood growth and formulating concepts that could shape future policy-making. Her efforts were consistent and deliberate, aimed at creating lasting change rather than seeking immediate recognition. Sophie referred to her method as fundamentally uncomplicated. From the beginning, Catherine recognized that life's focus isn't on rushing through it. Instead, it's about lasting through challenges. It's not about being superior to others. It's about contributing to something greater than your own interests. She realized that the recognition people notice isn't tied to an individual, but to the responsibilities they fulfill. Her actions were always influenced by this silent comprehension. By the conclusion of 2025, the public sentiment toward these individuals was distinctly apparent. Catherine enjoyed a great deal of public favor. William, too, was well regarded. However, Meghan did not share the same high approval. These statistics highlighted the varied public perceptions of three family members, all existing in the same time frame, yet seen in contrasting lights. When public events were set side by side, the difference became more pronounced. A Christmas concert organized by Catherine attracted millions of spectators and garnered significant backing. Meanwhile, a rival initiative associated with Meghan found it challenging to capture equivalent attention within the same arena. Sophie noted that timing wasn't the only factor in these events. In her opinion, they unveiled a pattern. Throughout the years, she had observed that these kinds of situations kept recurring. Often, major public events coincided with other announcements or releases, suggesting a rivalry that seemed quite deliberate. However, the way people reacted varied with each occasion. Catherine consistently received ongoing support for her projects. Her activities, talks, and philanthropic efforts succeeded without the need for marketing or self-promotion. They were successful based on their own merits. Her contributions to mental health, early childhood education, and community service gained recognition. However, these endeavors didn't appear as mere acts. Instead, they seemed authentic, steadfast, and driven by a strong sense of responsibility. Sophie thought this distinction was crucial. Catherine didn't see her position as a performance. She approached it as a commitment to serving others. Instead of attempting to transform the system, she operated within its confines, gradually earning confidence. Her confidence was built on the foundation of trust. Individuals reacted to her because her behavior resonated with something they knew well. She didn't come across as aloof or meticulously orchestrated. Instead, she seemed genuinely engaged. She arrived, completed her tasks, and discreetly departed once everything was finished. Conversely, Sophie talked about another method used in different places, which frequently depended on being visible, having a presence in the media, and sharing stories with the public. However, over time, it became apparent how people reacted. Simply grabbing attention wasn't sufficient to forge enduring trust. What history will finally remember. As the program that aired on May 1st was nearing its conclusion, Sophie smoothly redirected her thoughts from previous events to future prospects. Her tone was reassuring and self-assured, suggesting that she was closing the book on a challenging period. She mentioned that the monarchy, despite undergoing significant trials, emerged more resilient in certain aspects. The prolonged period of public disagreements, interviews, documentaries, legal battles, and media scrutiny had undoubtedly left an impact. During this time, there was an overwhelming sense of chaos, mixed emotions, and clamor from every direction. However, for Sophie, these events triggered a significant change. It compelled the institution to introspect. It pushed it to realign with its fundamental mission. She referred to it as a period of realignment. It was a time when ambiguity started to resolve. It was essential to revisit the basic understanding of the monarchy's purpose. It shouldn't be seen as mere amusement, nor should it be viewed as just a trademark. Instead, it should be recognized as a constant presence founded on responsibility. She expressed that the priority wasn't about winning people's approval. It centered on earning trust. It wasn't about pleasing every opinion on the internet, but about showing up during important national events. According to her, this was what truly mattered. By the close of 2025, the situation concerning the Sussex name had shifted. Key media agreements were not as frequent. Reports indicated that funding for their charity had decreased. The intense spotlight that once focused on them started to diminish. Sophie noticed a basic inconsistency that she thought couldn't persist indefinitely. In her opinion, you couldn't disapprove of an establishment while also relying on its representation. It wasn't consistent to assert separation from the monarchy and simultaneously use its symbols to spark international appeal. She felt that eventually, these conflicting messages would come into conflict. She communicated it using straightforward language. When a family is labeled as dysfunctional, unfriendly, or damaging, it can't also be portrayed as a positive example of achievement. Eventually, she noted, people start to perceive this contradiction. Sophie discussed how the palace remained quiet amid widespread public criticism. While some interpreted this silence as a sign of weakness, she offered a different perspective. She viewed it as an intentional decision, a strategic choice to avoid fueling disputes by giving them attention. In her opinion, frequent responses from an organization can actually empower the issue. By opting to remain silent, the palace prioritized its responsibilities. It maintained its routine of activities, events, and community service, without addressing each allegation directed at it. She mentioned that this strategy wasn't meant to overlook issues. Instead, it focused on maintaining equilibrium. It was about allowing time to distinguish between what's genuine and what's not. As time went on, the family members who had jobs maintained their public positions. Activities persisted. Involvement in charitable causes remained ongoing. Customs were upheld. Gradually, attention returned to serving rather than engaging in disagreements. Sophie thought about how she had felt throughout the whole ordeal. Initially, she was optimistic that everything would resolve itself in due course and expected that clarity would develop with time. However, the gap between them only widened. She expressed a feeling that the dynamics between the organization and a person had undergone a total transformation. What used to feel like a family now seemed more detached, structured, and separated. In her closing thoughts, she discussed how the organization handled the situation internally. Rather than causing a stir or engaging in a public dispute, they opted for modifications. Responsibilities were made more distinct, limits were reinforced, yet the overall framework stayed intact. She thought the crisis had really challenged the system. It had revealed flaws, generated stress, and required tough choices. However, ultimately, it didn't shatter the core. When the dust finally settled, she observed that the fundamental essence remained unchanged: commitment, contribution, persistence. These values were unaffected by shifts in public perception or media trends. They endured consistently. Sophie wrapped up her thoughts, feeling a subtle but definite closure. She believed the narrative had come to its rightful end. The clamor would diminish, the news would eventually be forgotten. And ultimately, time would determine what was genuinely significant. She thought history might forget the specifics. However, it wouldn't forget trends. It would recall the decisions made, and it would note those who remained and those who walked away. Ultimately, her point was straightforward. Organizations endure beyond fleeting events. Responsibility prevails over sensationalism. And history, with its enduring and meticulous recollection, always has the last say.